and welcome to the Women on the Wall radio show. We are excited to be with you here today, live in studio in Arlington, Texas. And I'm excited that I have my co-host with me, President of Women on the Wall, Rebecca Forrest. How are you doing, Rebecca?
I'm good. I'm glad to be back here in the studio with Josh today. We're just excited. We've been away for a while, a lot of stuff going on, but we're glad to be here.
That's right. And there's been some great upgrades, if you will, to our radio studio. And we are excited of the opportunities that we're going to have moving forward with this radio show, to be in studio together, but then also to be live on the ground at different events. And so there's good things happening, so stay tuned. We're going to start out the show today. There's two main issues that we're going to cover, education, immigration, and then that always leads into national security.
Exactly.
Because we know that what's happening in our country today, and specifically in Texas, with the influx of illegal aliens, it is truly a national security issue. But I want to talk about what is going to happen come September, when our schools across the state of Texas open. We use the hashtag #CanISee, and you can follow a lot of the work that we're doing with Women on the Wall with the hashtag #CanISee. And I'm asking, can I see what is going to be taught in the public schools starting in September? And we're going to talk about APUSH, which is the new AP U.S. History framework. But then we're going to talk about, can I see who's in the classroom with my child? Are they a illegal alien? Are they actually school age?
Right.
What we know is there's people who are posing as minors and getting into our public schools. So we're going to talk about that. But let's start first on the education front. We were excited. Women on the Wall hosted Dr. Duke Pesta in Keller, Texas the other night. We're going to play a short video of Dr. Pesta, and he had a warning. And we're going to talk about that warning. Is the education bubble about to burst?
The education bubble is coming. It's going to burst like the housing bubble. And schools are going to be so desperate for kids, they are not going to restrict it to the SAT and ACT. And one final thought on that, with regard to this coming educational bubble. Right now, a year and a half ago, 10 different universities in this country, big ones, including Duke and Harvard and Stanford and Yale, they hired a 6-figure coordinator whose job it was to simply recruit homeschool kids. Each of those universities in the last year and a half hired people whose sole job is to go after homeschool kids. I think that it's a threat, it's an idle threat. We're reaching the point rapidly where the bubble's going to burst. Universities who've overextended themselves will want students. The student loan bubble's going to have to burst. So what's going to happen is that there's going to be all sorts of room for alternate ways to into the university. I believe that. And I guess I would close by saying, as we cannot allow the threat of something to come down the road to prevent us from educating our kids the best possible way we can now. If the only reason we're on board with this garbage is because 10 years from now, when my 5th grader is getting ready for college, she might not get into the college of her choice because the SAT is Common Core, conceding to that kind of pressure. Now granted, will most moms and dads do it? I don't know. But again, I'm encouraged by the fact that this issue has more of them motivated than I've ever seen any other issue.
And what you heard Dr. Duke Pesta say is that this education bubble, the narrative that we have to buy into all of this Common Core philosophy of education, is so that our children are prepared to take the SAT, the ACT to get into college, or that we need for them to take these AP classes. AP stands for Advanced Placement classes, in order for them to be prepared to get into college, college level courses. Well, what we know for a fact is that the mastermind behind the Common Core is, or one of the masterminds, is David Coleman, a guy named David Coleman. And he is now, after he was involved in putting together the Common Core, now he has become the president of the College Board. You know, it's interesting when you look at the strategies and tactics of how this federal takeover of our education system has happened. They keep using the strategies over and over again, and we keep falling for it. But things are being exposed. And when you look at how the Common Core was put into 46 states, and then C-Scope into 875 school districts in Texas. And isn't it interesting that the Common Core, the copyright to the Common Core national standards, is owned by the NGA? The NGA, they said, oh, it's the National Governors Association. This is state-led. And the governors are all on board. The NGA is a nonprofit organization out of Washington, D.C. It is not led by the governors. And so they own the copyright to the Common Core national standards. They implemented it. No one knew about it. Then in Texas, we have C-Scope. Interesting. C-Scope was put into 875 school districts across our state. Nobody knew that it was coming in. We didn't have, parents didn't have a voice in it. Teachers didn't have a voice in it. The copyright to C-Scope is owned by the 20 directors of the 20 education service centers that service our school districts. They said that C-Scope was district-led, that teachers and districts were begging for it, so they produced C-Scope. They own the copyright. That these 20 education service directors formed a nonprofit organization, and now they own the copyright. Lo and behold, David Coleman is now the president of the College Board. The College Board owns the copyright. They are a nonprofit organization that owns the copyright to the SAT, the ACT, and the AP framework, the curriculum that the advanced placement students in all 50 states take these advanced placement classes. That curriculum product, that framework is owned, and the copyright is owned by the College Board. This is a sham, folks. It's all about the money. They're using our children as guinea pigs. And we have to step back and understand what this is and expose it. And we really do have the power, because it's our tax dollars that these nonprofit organizations have access to. We just need to hold our local school boards accountable and say, don't buy these products. Don't use these products. And to our state representatives and our state Board of Education, defund the AP. Don't train our Texas teachers to use these products. And what's interesting is, it was Rebecca's idea, by the way. We had a counter conference.
Oh, yes. Okay. I remember.
The Can I See the Solution Conference, because the National PTA Association, a nonprofit organization, was holding their big conference in Austin, and their keynote speaker was Arnie Duncan. Arnie Duncan is the cheerleader of the Common Core. And when you start looking at those sessions at that PTA convention, they were all about the Common Core and training parents to be okay with their children's data being collected in the name of education research. And so it was Rebecca's idea, and so we we held a counter conference,
Yes.
the Can I See Solution, and we brought in the best of the best, the
Right.
people who are out there nationally fighting against this Common Core and exposing it. We had Dr. Sandra Stotsky and Dr. James Milgram, who David Coleman actually hired to validate the Common Core national standards in English language arts and math. And they said no, they would not validate them because they would put our children behind 2 to 3 years in English language arts and math. And so we had them. We had Jane Robbins with the American Principles Project that did an incredible presentation on the data collection and this big picture of who this is behind the scenes. We also had Dr. Peg Luxick, who's out of Pennsylvania, who's been fighting against outcome-based education for many years. We had the folks over at Eagle Forum National. Glenn came from the Eagle Forum. We also had the Texas president, Kathy Adams, with the Eagle Forum, who really laid out how this battle has been fought by Phyllis Schlafly
Right,
for
for
so
a
many
long time.
years. So we had the best of the best. You know what's interesting is a lot of our elected officials, they have no clue. They don't understand the big picture, and they're passing legislation. They're doing things. They're being manipulated to pass legislation that has put us to where we are. Here today in Texas, this is what's happening. Thankfully, we have heroes like State Representative Bill Zedler, who actually showed up.
Yes.
He came to the conference.
Both
He
days.
was there both days, sat through. He tweeted out, I loved his tweet. He said, "Day 1, I learned what the Common Core is. Day 2, I learned why it is so dangerous for Texas children." So I give huge kudos to Bill Zedler for
Yes.
showing up. Another representative or elected official that showed up was State Board of Education Ken Mercer. And Ken said, you know, I heard about it, I wasn't necessarily going to come, but something just told me I needed to be here. Well, he got his eyes opened to the truth. He was there when Jane Robbins with the American Principles Project was talking about this data collection and what the big picture is. And Jane talked about this AP U.S. history framework. And she said you need to go to your State Board of Education elected officials and let them know about this and have them push back. And Ken Mercer said, well, I'm on the State Board of Education. What do I need to do? And so he met Jane Robbins. They talked. Bill Zedler talked with them. Ken Mercer put forth a resolution for the next State Board of Education meeting for Texas to reject the AP U.S. history framework. Now, he wasn't, because of timing, he wasn't able to get that resolution on the agenda for the meeting that just happened on the 18th, July 18th. But what Chairman of the State Board of Education allowed was for there to be public testimony at this hearing. And so what was great is we were able to give out the call of action, and they came in. We had over a dozen people testify at that meeting. I was able to testify. We had Mary Jane Smitherman,
Yes.
Barry Smitherman's wife, came and testified. She was phenomenal because the State Board of Education folks kept asking, you know, where is there a side-by-side comparison of the old AP history framework that was 5 pages compared to the new AP history framework that was 98 pages but excluded our founding fathers. Well, Mary Jane Smitherman did that. She came ready to testify with the side-by-side comparison of these two frameworks.
Right.
And she pointed out that among their children, the Smitherman children, they had taken, I think it was 41 AP classes. throughout their years in Texas schools. So they knew what AP curriculum and what it was all about, because they were preparing their children to be prepared for college. She was appalled what she saw in this AP framework. We also had Mary Bowen, who's a South Texas teacher who did a phenomenal, and we have the video of these testimonies up at womenonthewall.org. We also had Janine McGregor, who's been speaking across the state of Texas, talking about the testing. She testified. So we had people there to testify, and they did a phenomenal job. At that meeting, the school board agreed that they were going, the state school board talked about how they were going to put this on the agenda for the next meeting. The problem is that meeting doesn't start until September, or is not till September. Well, it's too late by then. So we've got to take action and educate people now to what's going on in these AP classes, and to pull back. As Duke Pesta said, Dr. Duke Pesta, the bubble's about to burst. We know how they're using our tax dollars to indoctrinate our children. And so we have to, as parents, step up and hurt their pocketbook, take our kids out of these AP classes. So there is going to be a national conference call that's hosted by, or sponsored by American Principles Project, the organization Jane Robbins works with, and then CWA, Concerned Women for America, Tanya Diddy with Georgia's Concerned Women for America, who has been a hero in actually understanding and exposing what's really happening here and standing up. She's been working, doing great things. And she is a former AP U.S. history teacher. So she's going to be hosting this conference call. And let's play that video, Josh. Going to show and announce this conference call. It will be Monday night at 8 p.m. and they're going to answer questions, and we need folks from all across the country to call in to this national conference call and get the facts, from people like Jane Robbins, who's been doing great work with the Pioneer Institute to uncovering the big picture of what this is. Also, Larry Krieger is a renowned author. He's a AP US history teacher, and so he is going to be on this conference call as well. So, Josh, do we have it ready to go?
Jane Robbins is Senior Fellow with the American Principles Project, and she's going to share some thoughts with us as well.
Thank you. I'm very glad to be here. I think it's appropriate that we're meeting across the street from a Gates-funded organization that is pushing Gates-funded education reform. And it's important to note that these types of strategies that are being discussed across the street are the same sort of thing as Dr. Milgram indicated that we've seen over and over again. It's Common Core, it's related progressive education strategies that are coming in even to Texas. Even though Texas supposedly doesn't have Common Core, it's definitely got the progressive education strategies that are there. And these they replicate and they in fact exacerbate everything that has damaged education over the last 50 years. But we're supposed to expect that this time it's going to be good, that if we just do more of what doesn't work, then this time it will make things better. And it's bleeding over into other areas of education as well, including the AP classes, for example. And there's something on the tables about AP U.S. history, the new framework that they've come out with for AP U.S. history, which will completely usurp state history standards, including Texas. There's almost no alignment between Texas history standards, but the people at the College Board, who are, of course, funded by Gates and funded by the federal government, are pushing these new revisionist history standards. So that's something that Texas parents need to be aware of as well, and maybe can talk to their state board, or their Texas board, to push back against the Common Core. This is what we are trying to let people know, that you can push back against this. This is not a fait accompli. This is not something that we just have to just sit back and put up with. This is something that parents need to stand up and say enough. Legislators need to stand up and say enough. They need to stand up to the federal government, stand up to the people who have the big money. And that's what we're hoping to try to persuade people that they have the power to do. And I think that Texas may be the best place to start. Thanks.
Mr. Mercer?
APUSH, people don't know, it's AP is Advanced Placement, and the UHS is United States History. All right? And what you're referring to would, up till this May, there was a 5-page common college board document that every educator in the U.S. got. Well, now, beginning in 5 weeks from now, it's a 98-page document. Much more. Is that true?
Yes, it is.
So what you have online, a document you have here, the framework, is a 98-page document where it was a 5-page document. Again, what happened, what we've always traditionally had for all states, and traditionally, I think Mr. Rowley was referring to, that whatever state, South Carolina, Idaho, Oregon, whatever, they had their standards, and that topical document kind of wrote on top of those standards. Board members, and I apologize, I know you're standing here, if you could turn to page 10, the document you just got, you'll see a couple. It's pretty easy. Both of them are bolded. And it talks about beginning May of 2015. Well, that's the first time this test will be offered. It says every AP exam question will be rooted in these learning objectives, the framework. Farther down, it says beginning with May 2015, no U.S. history exam question will require students to know historical context that falls outside this outline. Now, to me, that means basically the 98-page document, that is the framework that you study from, and things will not come outside of that.
We got kind of go through a timeline of how this course was developed. All of the AP courses are in the process of redevelopment. This is not the first of the AP courses. We have had a few others in the past couple of years.
Is there a common core theme in this AP issue?
No, ma'am.
Oh my gosh.
Not too.
I'm asking the question.
It's interesting that the Deborah Pennington, who testified for the College Board at that July 18th meeting, said that all of the AP frameworks were being rewritten. Why is that? I mean, when we've talked about it before, and I know, Rebecca, this has been a passion of yours, you know, we have wonderful veteran teachers who know how to teach these AP classes. Why are there the frameworks and how these classes are going to be taught? Why are they all being rewritten? History hasn't changed. Math hasn't changed. English grammar has not changed. Why is everything being rewritten? And when asked specifically, is this the Common Core theme, or I would say philosophy, she outright lied. This is the Common Core philosophy of education that we've been talking about for so long. It's the knowledge-based, foundational, traditional education philosophy, which supposedly, and I believe they are right now, but they could change. We need to watch it. Our Texas standards, our Texas TEKS are knowledge-based. They are set up to where in math you learn addition, then subtraction, then multiplication, and you build up to higher math. What this is doing is dumbing down our system and using the Common Core philosophy of education of relativism, where everything is just subjective. So this is the Common Core, and she's lying to us. Whether she knows or not, I don't know. But we have a call to action. One, get on that conference call on Monday night, and you can find all the information about that conference call on womenonthewall.org in that video. Number 2, call the Southwest director of the College Board. He happens to be from San Antonio. His name is Dr. Richard Middleton. He happens to be my old superintendent from Northeast ISD. I know that he has given a lot of those wonderful veteran teachers jobs over the last 20 years. And now I don't know that those veteran teachers would be real happy to know that Dr. Richard Middleton is working hand in hand with David Coleman, head of the College Board, that is bringing this in. So I would say call Dr. Richard Middleton's office. The number is 866-392-3017. That's 866-392-3017. Extension 1808, and then hit pound. And let Dr. Richard Middleton know that you as a Texan, you as an American, you don't even have to be in Texas because he's the Southwest region of the United States director. Call him and say, as American moms and dads or teachers, we reject this new revisionist APUSH framework, and we call on you to dismantle it. You can also call Dr. David Coleman, the mastermind behind this, and his number is 888-225-5427, and then you'll hit #6, and you will get an operator, and she will take your name and number, and we need thousands of folks calling these numbers and bombarding them and say, we reject this APUS history framework, but we reject the Common Core philosophy of education that you are putting in, and we will demand that our taxes not be used for these curriculum products that are owned by the College Board. And we need to take a stand. That's how we will burst the bubble, as Dr. Duke Pesta said. And one of the things, before we move on, that I think it's so important, and you can go to the Women on the Wall YouTube account and see the speech and the talk that Duke Pesta gave, because one of the things that he says is that these colleges and universities, they're not going to be looking at the Common Core. They know that this is dumbed down. And so you can, if your child wants to get into a college or a university, go to that college and say, I want to take your college placement exams. Let my child take those exams and then decide whether they can come into your college. Those colleges and universities, they want your money too. And it's going to get to a point where they need students. And they're not going to restrict you from coming in based on the AP or the class placement or these national exams. So we have an opportunity to push back. The only way it works, though, is if it's a large number.
Right.
And so we're doing our part to let people know that this is going on and to expose it.
You know, the other thing that Donna mentioned last night on the call was that when she called, she also reminded them that Common Core in Texas was illegal. It's illegal. So
Yes.
that's a key thing to tell them, I think,
Yes.
when you call.
That's exactly right. Call, because we passed HB 462 that says no to the Common Core. Now, what we do know is that we need to hold our Attorney General, Greg
Yes.
Abbott, accountable and say, look, he even made a ruling that this was illegal. So we need to pressure them. And so, it's interesting because the next thing that we're asking, can I see who's in my child's class?
Yes.
And we participated in a grassroots press conference of grassroots leaders from across the state of Texas who have been calling on Governor Perry and our leaders in Texas to shut down the border, to close the border, to crickets. And so we had another press conference. Joanne Fleming led the push for this press conference. It happened, and I spoke about who the victims are of the policies, not only of Obama, but the policies of our elected leaders in Texas, their campaigns are funded by a lot of these lobby groups who are pro-open borders. We know about it.
Yes.
Charles Butts with HEB, they want that cheap labor. Bob Perry, who's no longer with us, but he funded a lot of the super PACs that stopped the sanctuary city legislation.
Right. Yes.
So we know that the policies that have been in place have been dangling a carrot. And it's interesting. I want, Josh, if we can play the video of the press conference with Ted Cruz, Senator Ted Cruz, Attorney General Greg Abbott, and Congressman Michael Burgess.
Witnessing a humanitarian crisis unfolding. That is the direct consequence of President Obama's lawlessness. The United States is responding, as we always do, with compassion. We just toured this Air Force facility where up to 1,200 children are being cared for, being provided medical care, are being provided a safe environment. But they have come through harrowing circumstances. In 2011, roughly 6,000 unaccompanied children were apprehended trying to cross into the United States illegally. But then something happened. The next year, in 2012, President Obama lawlessly granted amnesty to some 800,000 people here illegally who entered as children. And the direct consequence of that lawlessness, of that amnesty, is that we have seen the number of children taking the incredible risks that are entailed with coming across the border grow exponentially. It has gone from 6,000 in 2011 to this year it is estimated to be 90,000 unaccompanied children will be apprehended trying to cross the border. Next year, the estimates are 145,000 unaccompanied children. That is from 6,000 to 90,000 to 145,000. And all of that is the direct consequence of President Obama's lawlessness. It's worth all of us understanding that these are heartbreaking circumstances. These are little boys, little girls that their parents are handing over to coyotes. And these coyotes are not well-meaning social workers trying to care for these kids. These are hardened, cold criminals. These are transnational, global criminal cartels. And they are vicious, violent murderers. These children are being subjected to physical abuse, to sexual abuse. Some of them are losing their lives. To have upwards of 90,000 kids in the care, so to speak, of violent drug dealers is tragic and heartbreaking. We just heard stories of little boys and little girls forced by these drug dealers to cut off the fingers or cut off the ears of other little boys and little girls in order to extort money from their families. And these children are told, if you don't cut off the fingers or ears of another child, you'll be shot. And the trauma that these kids have endured, every one of us who's a parent, if you could imagine your child going through the hell that these kids have gone through, you can't help but be horrified. You can't help but lift these kids up in prayer, but you can't help but say, we have to change the legal system that is encouraging what is happening here. When the President of the United States prevents the Border Patrol from following the law and enforcing our immigration laws, when the President of the United States announces to the world amnesty for those who have broken the law, the consequence is people respond to that. And the way they've responded is by sending their children and handing their children over to drug dealers and vicious cartels. This is heartbreaking, but we need to act to stop it. We need to act to stop it, number one, by finally securing the borders, and number two, by not offering amnesty, which only incentivizes more and more and more people to violate the law, and in this instance, to engender the safety and lives of their kids. I now turn it over to Congressman Michael Burgess.
So what is happening is there are people going down to the border that have been leading the charge to expose what's happening. There was a group of grassroots Texans, many of them we know, Rebecca, we've worked with, that have gone down there, and the purpose of their trip was to highlight the holes in the border.
There are many.
There are many. And Breitbart, Texas, and Brandon Darby they've been the lead on this, really, in exposing, and I encourage people to go to Breitbart, Texas, and read the articles and see the pictures and the videos. They're the ones that produced that the video from that press conference. But Brandon Darby said that he organized it to show the holes. And he says, we're told that the border is secure. The border is secure. And in the Rio Grande Valley sector is somehow representative that part is secure, but the sector right next door to it, the Laredo sector, is wide open. And I think Julie McCarty with the Northeast Tarrant Tea Party, her description of how she felt is pretty powerful. She said, it's emotionally confusing. 1 second I'm swelling with pride and patriotism as our kick-butt Texas gunboats pull up with a load of tough-looking officers flying flags, and moments later, I'm embarrassed and ashamed of my state and my country as I watch a woman waltz illegally into our country without fear in the broad daylight.
Absolutely.
And when you think about the fact, I think he said that the estimated numbers are 140,000 of these minors who, once they get over here, legally, our public schools have to educate them. So when I say, can I see who's in my child's classroom as a mother, those children who their moms and dads were dangled a carrot, that their children will be educated and be given freedom if they could just get them across the border, that those parents are willing to give their child to a coyote, to smuggle them across. And in that journey, as Ted Cruz says, they're brutalized, some are murdered, some die trying to jump on the train, that they're not old enough to pull themselves up and they get sucked under the train. Those children are victims. They're victims, and they're being used in as political pawns. But who else are victims? My kids. My 3 kids. who are in the public schools. One of them's in private school, 2 are in public school. Is my school district prepared financially for the influx of these students? Is my school district prepared for the health risks? Why should my tax dollars be paid to educate my children and put them in a room where children, we know that tuberculosis has been, that there are kids with tuberculosis, scabies, and there are diseases that these kids, to no fault of their own, could be bringing in and infecting not only my children, but their teachers, the administrators, and the community. Because if they're in the schools, then they're in our community. And they're being planted, I believe, to destroy our country. And so we talked about what Hamas is doing with their own children, putting their children up as targets. That form of terrorism, where you're willing to use your own children or children and women to terrorize. That's what Hamas is doing, but that's what is happening to our own in the United States, not just in Israel or Gaza, but in the United States in our public schools. That is wrong. That is wrong, and parents need to start standing up, just like we stand up to what's coming into the school curriculum-wise. We need to educate and demand that our local school boards, our local superintendents start asking questions and be strong on this issue. What we know is only 20% coming across the border are minors. The rest, 80%, are not minors, and we know that there are adults posing as children. The drug cartel, they're posing as children, as 15, 16, 17-year-olds, to get into our school, to get access to our kids. It's crazy. It's crazy. Okay, I'm off my rant. Rebecca, what do you think?
I'm going to go to Canada and puzzle a 14-year-old.
I know.
That's a good idea.
It's crazy. It's crazy. And Rebecca, you have been this issue of illegal immigration. You've been in the battle for many years with ERCOT. You've been at the Capitol. You've testified in front of these legislators who laughed.
Oh, yes. And rolled their eyes.
And
as if
rolled
we
their
were
eyes.
crazy.
And now it's coming to fruition.
Right. I think in the 2009 session, I took in photographs of my friend that lives in Eagle Pass. I think I may have mentioned this, lives on the border, right on the river. And he's a retired Border Patrol agent. And the cartel, a lot of the leadership is right across the river from his house. And he had photographs of them bringing across huge shipments, swimming them across, of drugs in broad daylight. And right underneath the Border Patrol cameras, which are on his property, big sacks full of drugs. And I took them in and I testified about it, and I said, this is happening in broad daylight underneath the Border Patrol tower. Why aren't you guys doing something about this? And not a word, not a question, nothing. It was as if, they just didn't hear a thing we were saying. But the problem with the diseases is really, it's troubling because, if something gets started in this country, aside from just the expense of paying for it, a lot of these, especially the tuberculosis, it's antibiotic resistant forms. So it's very, very serious. And then we have the Ebola thing that just recently, and of course I know they're trying to say that we shouldn't be concerned about it, but we shouldn't be exposing our citizens and especially our children to any of this. And how are we paying for this?
Right.
How are we paying for any of this? It just amazes me because we can't supposedly even really afford taking care of our own children in school correctly, the right way, funding everything. I mean, the teachers are buying supplies and yet we're going to be bringing in all these children who don't speak the language.
And that's you've brought up that point, is that how are we going to teach these children? How are we going to have enough teachers, English as a second language teachers? Well, what are they doing? They're bringing in foreign teachers to teach these children. This is a takeover, and it's interesting because one of the things that I said when I testified 2 weeks ago, when you look at David Coleman and you look at his mother, his mother believes in a revolution, and she talks about how to teach a liberal arts education in a democracy. We are not a democracy. That's why they have to get rid of our founding fathers, because our founding fathers warned us against a democracy. We are a constitutional republic, and we are seeing the results of living as a democracy right now with this issue. These minor children and their families and the illegal aliens, they have rights that we don't. And the threat of a democracy is that the minority rules. It's a mob rule. And if they can control the narrative, we've got to take care of these little children. They're trying to control. Yes. What would Jesus do? And what we know is that they're using organizations like Catholic Charities. The federal government is giving huge grants to these organizations to continue to hold the carrot and take care of these children. And I want to give kudos to Lisa Gross, who's a friend of ours. She's a writer. She is a Catholic apologetic, and she has really looked at this issue of what's going on with Catholic Charities, because this is social justice. A democracy is social justice. And Lisa Gross says that she believes it is a moral obligation for the church to take care of these illegal minors or illegal aliens, but not using our tax dollars to do it. And she said it's the church's moral obligation to care for these children and these people, but it is the state's moral obligation to not hold the carrot and to deter them from coming in. I think that is a clear way to state it is not the federal government's job to give grants to organizations to take care of these children.
Right. It's all about making money at this point.
It's all about making money.
I think more and more, because their pews are not very full, and they want to make sure they have more people in there. But you know, I was thinking the other day when we were talking about this, wouldn't we be better off just to, treat the children with medical care, get them stabilized, and then send them back to their home country? I mean, we could give them maybe a yearly grant of some sort. We could send them all a little bit of money to their home countries with them.
Yes.
Wouldn't we be better off doing that to help them
in
there? I mean, there's got to be a better way to do it than to keep them all here.
But it shouldn't be a mandated gift.
No.
It should be we will send, if Glenn Beck wants to take care of these children and give them toys and give them all of these things, that's fine. But give it to them in their home country, not here. That's one thing. There's a book called The Immorality of Illegal Immigration. And Father Basso says what happens is, and this is what the Catholic Church, for so many years, we feel this moral obligation to take in these children and to even bring in these students from foreign countries and educate them. And he said, in his mind, he was thinking, I'm going to help educate these people, and then they'll go back to their home country and bring the status of their third world country up.
Yes, they don't.
But that's not reality. The reality is that we bring them over here and they stay, and their home country continues to go down and stay. So are we doing the moral thing? No. We're doing the immoral thing by creating the environment for their home country that cannot now provide a safe and secure homeland. We need to do exactly what you say. Get them back to their home country, and then voluntarily, I don't want our federal dollars sending money to these home countries that gets caught up in the like what's happening with Hamas in Gaza. We're funding Hamas. By the way, you can follow the national security issue under the hashtag defund Hamas. And we're posting this information about what's going on with the immigration, and the two, defund Hamas, and then also Can I See. Those are the two hashtags on Twitter.
The other thing, I was just reading an article the other day about the UN being in the big middle of all of this immigration mess. And it just astounds me, some of the things I've been reading. It said that they were encountering UN personnel at the detention facilities, and that they were making the Border Patrol gather up the MS-13 gangsters, and then they were sending them all together in various locations in the United States. And one of the Border Patrol agents said that I objected to admitting MS-13 gangsters into the United States, and I was told that we have our orders to treat them like anyone else. So they're loading them all up. The UN is in the big middle of it. Right. Why is the UN over here in our business?
Right.
I mean, why are they? Alan Wall, who was on our show the other day, I was trying to find this article he wrote, but he was talking about the ambassadors from, I think it was Central America and another country, that were coming to meet over here, I guess with Obama. And Alan said, what we ought to be doing is gathering all of those kids up, all those people up, and just having them there at the meeting location and saying, we'll help you get them all home. Just take them back home. But instead, they're coming over here to interrogate us and look at the detention facilities and make sure we're treating them right. Make sure and that their civil rights aren't being, abused. And it's insanity.
It is.
At the highest level. But anyone can figure out that this is all coming about because we all know how these people will vote. There's no doubt how these people are going to vote if they're allowed to stay. So that's the plan.
Pat Caddell, he's so funny. He talks about the Democrat being the stupid party.
Yeah.
But the Republicans are the stupid party? Yeah. It is. I mean, when you look at how the Republicans are outmaneuvered every time.
Every time. They are just stupid.
Whether it's education, whether it's immigration. And now is the time. We talked about this with Dr. Duke Pesta. We're in a primary right now. There is no difference on education right now between Wendy Davis and Letitia Van de Putte on the Democrat side and Dan Patrick. And I in my heart believe that Dan Patrick is probably a strong conservative guy. He's got it in his heart. He's malleable, if that's a word.
Yes.
What Duke Pesta said is that Republicans are actually more sleazy on these issues because at least Wendy Davis and Van Depute, they're for all this, but they just come out and say it.
Mm-hmm.
The Republicans tell you one thing and then do another.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, we passed a no Common Core bill, but then they passed HB 5 that is the same philosophy of education. And I want to give people a heads up that there is a Senate committee meeting on education August 26th. And Senator Dan Patrick will be hosting or running that committee meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And there will be time for public testimony. So I encourage folks to go and testify at that meeting and let them know what the reality is on the ground for our students. What the reality is on the ground, whether it's with HB 5 and how this is affecting the AP and the dual credit classes, or the reality on the ground of while we're looking at all of these classes that we have children coming in, how are we going to fund all of this?
Exactly.
How are we going to do this? The fact that HB 5 sets schools, public schools up for failure is beyond reproach. And so we have to, and during the primary season is the only time that they're or not primary, during the general election, now that the primary is over, that we will get these people to listen.
You know, I was going to mention before we got off the immigration subject, and there was a great article by Brian Fisher, who is with the American Family Association. It's really good. But he talks about the Heritage Foundation indicated that the ultimate cost of the amnesty plan supported by the Evangelical Immigration Roundtable, or whatever they're called, would be well over $6 trillion. And that was back in, I don't think that was recent before all of these people. It was in April, I think, sometimes. But then he also discusses Scripture, which I was glad to see that. Says that their position is an offense against the biblical concept of justice and equality before the law. Those who have broken our immigration law by trespassing on sovereign American soil, a criminal offense, will jump to the head of the queue, ahead of the 4 million foreigners waiting patiently in foreign countries for their immigration requests to be processed. He said that, it talks about Moses. Where is that? That Moses asked for permission to enter land that was not his. And when he was denied entry, he didn't sneak in and demand special favors. He respected the border laws and the sovereignty, and he went in a different direction. And then they also, it seems they've forgotten the biblical principle that God is the one who has allotted the boundaries of all nations, and insist that those boundaries be respected by peoples from other lands. But for some reason, they get up there and start quoting Leviticus. I think that's their favorite one. Right. And then that's the only one anybody ever talks about. But he also says, where's the compassion for all of the Americans that are going to be stuck paying for this? And the things that we're
getting killed,
yes,
children that are being raped,
yes,
we're getting screwed out of an education.
Yes,
right,
exactly. Where is the compassion for Americans? And their first obligation is to America.
Right.
It's our elected officials. It's not their, they're not supposed to be concerned about everybody else over us.
Right. Exactly.
Because when America is gone,
that's it. That's it. And that is the goal of a lot of these people, is to equalize America in the world. And we need leaders by bringing it down. Exactly.
I know. And we're watching it play out.
Is to help your neighbor build build his own house.
Yes,
Help
exactly.
implement the free market in their
Their
country.
house.
Yes.
Exactly.
Buy
Exactly.